They say lightning never strikes twice, but what if death does, every 6 months? For Adunni and Kolapo, parenthood was a dream that repeatedly turned into a nightmare. They had everything: a strong marriage, a thriving farm, and the unwavering support of their village. But one thing eluded them: a child who would live beyond 6 months. The first time, it was a boy. He came into the world with a loud cry, his tiny fist curled as if prepared to fight fate itself. Adunni held him, sang to him, prayed over him. But 6 months later, he grew ill. A fever took hold of his fragile body, and despite all efforts, he slipped away in the dead of night. The villagers mourned with them, but some began to whisper. "This is not ordinary," one old woman muttered. "Something is taking their children." The second child was a girl. She too was healthy, her giggles filling the hut with joy. Adunni, wary but hopeful, barely let her out of her sight. When she reached 6 months, Adunni barely slept, watching her every breath. And yet, just like before, the fever came. Within days, she was gone. Kolapo buried her beside her brother, his hands shaking as he laid the tiny bundle into the earth. The third time, they didn't celebrate when Adunni became pregnant again. They did not sing, they did not dance. Even when another baby boy was born, their hearts remained guarded. "Perhaps this time will be different," Kolapo whispered. But 6 months later, they stood over yet another tiny grave. People in the village began to talk louder now. Some said it was the work of evil spirits. Others claimed Adunni had been cursed. A few suggested it was the same child returning over and over, only to die again. The Abiku, an elder, finally said, "A spirit child who belongs to the other world but keeps returning to torment its parents." Adunni wept. "What do we do? How do we stop this?" An old midwife, Mama Osun, stepped forward. Her eyes, aged by experience, held the weight of knowledge passed down through generations. "There is only one way," she said. "You must mark the child. If the Abiku returns and bears a scar from its past life, it will not live again." Kolapo hesitated. He had heard of this before. Tribal marks were given to identify reincarnated spirits. It was a painful process, especially for a newborn. But what was a little pain compared to the agony of another loss? So, they waited. When Adunni became pregnant again, she told no one. Fear lived in her bones now, and hope was a dangerous thing. Then, on a quiet night, she gave birth to another boy. He was strong, his cries piercing the night. Yet, Adunni did not smile. She only held him tightly, whispering prayers. 3 days after his birth, Mama Osun came. She carried a small blade and a bowl of herbs. The fire flickered as she walked, whispering incantations, calling upon the ancestors. Adunni turned away as the blade touched her son's cheek. He screamed, his tiny body jerking in pain. Kolapo clenched his fist but did not stop the ritual. When it was over, the baby's face bore 3 thin marks, the scars meant to trap his soul in the land of the living. Adunni rocked him, her tears mixing with the sweat on her skin. "Please stay," she whispered. The months passed. Every cough, every fever, every restless night sent Adunni into a panic. She did not sleep. She barely ate. But she watched her son, marking each day like a prisoner counting down a sentence. And then, the 6-month mark arrived. She held her breath. She refused to sleep, to leave his side for even a moment. Kolapo sat beside her, silent, waiting. A day passed. Then 2. Then 3. Their son lived. The fever never came. The cycle was broken. As their son grew, so did their hope. They named him Ifoleo, love brings joy. When he turned 1, the village gathered. They sang. They danced. They praised the gods for his life. Adunni held her son high in the air, tears streaming down her face. "You have stayed," she whispered. "You are truly ours." And in the firelight, Ifuleo's tribal marks glowed like a testament to a battle won, not just against death, but against fear, against tradition, against the unseen forces that had tried to steal her happiness away. Years later, Adunni told her son the story of his birth, of the siblings he never met, of the scars on his face that saved his life. Ifuleo listened, wide-eyed, and when she was done,